So, on its website, one of the stated aims of the British Pregnancy Advisory Service, BPAS, is to safeguard individual freedom and moral autonomy in making reproductive choices. Who could argue with that? Well, I'm delighted to welcome Anne Furedi, leading pro-choice advocate and BPAS chief executive since 2003, who will no doubt tell us more about those who do seek to limit individual freedom and moral autonomy in making reproductive choices, including abortion. Anne will now speak on standing up to abortion's opponents.
Thank you. I don't have any slides. I'm not presenting any data or important quotes, so I'm afraid. I've also gone a bit old school about it. It's quite nice to see how bored people are when you're talking to them. Thank you for the point that you just made about our commitment to advocacy and supporting autonomy. I do really feel that I'm so fortunate to have one of the best jobs, really. BPAS is a charity that's existed since 1968 and is still a bit old-fashioned in the sense that we have a twofold charitable remit. One is to provide services for women, and we provide abortions for about 70,000 women a year. Almost all of those are delivered free to the women because the National Health Service pays for almost all of the abortions to British residents. Women who pay for their own treatment these days are generally travelling from overseas. But we also have this advocacy remit as well, a public education remit. And I think it's really important because I think that one of the things that we're able to do is to take the experience of what women need when they receive our services, and indeed the experience of the doctors and nurses and midwives and everybody else who provides those services, and to use it to really try to explain to our politicians and the general public what is really going on. And I say that because I think that abortion is a really weird issue for people because it almost seems to exist on two levels. On the one hand, you've got abortion as a political and a moral issue, an issue of autonomy, of bodily integrity, an issue of women's rights, and it can be discussed in that area. On the other hand, what you have is you have abortion as a healthcare service. And it really comes home to you, that difference and that distinction really comes home to you when you're involved in provision. Because what you realise is that women never come to an abortion service as a demonstration of their pro-choiceness. You know, they might come to us for all manner of other reasons. You know, I sometimes have this real sort of sense that, you know, I now think I've heard absolutely everything in terms of people's reasons. But no woman seeks to obtain an abortion to exercise her right to abortion. And I think that's very, very important to keep in mind when we think about the contested way that it then plays out in the arena of public discussion. And in fact, you know, many of the women who come to us for termination of pregnancy don't agree with abortion. You know, very often, and in fact our doctors can find it quite challenging when somebody comes and, you know, they're really doing I really don't know how you could do your job. Or I really don't agree with abortion. I'm not like all those other women sitting out there you know, I mean, my colleague from Malaysia, SP Chung's professor, is laughing because I guess it happens exactly the same in Malaysia, saying yes it does. Wherever you are, it's like I am not like them. And I think that's because people have real stereotypes of the kind of women who have abortions and the reasons why women have abortions. And it's not like them. So consequently, when we talk about abortion and when we deal with abortion's opponents, it can become quite hard, because what you're doing is you're having discussions on all kinds of various different layers, different levels of abstraction, and it can be quite difficult to engage. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. The first thing that I want to say, though, that in terms of standing up to abortion's opponents, we're really doing... I'm just going to cover the bag up. It's so you don't get the tweet noises. It's standing up to abortion's opponents. I really think we're doing pretty well at the moment. I look back. I've been involved in campaigning for abortion rights for 35 years or something that long. I've been doing the job that I do at the moment for about 13 years. And the way that things have changed over the last couple of years has been phenomenal. It's absolutely been phenomenal. When we first decided that we would launch a campaign for decriminalisation of abortion, to take abortion outside of to take abortion out of the criminal law, there was a sense among those of us that were discussing that this was really going for the highest peak. In fact, we had this discussion that we kind of needed a campaign. We didn't like the idea of just trying to extend the Abortion Act to Northern Ireland, the Abortion Act that we'd got here. We thought the Abortion Act that we got here was pretty inadequate. We're looking that, well, there were clearly legal changes that were going to happen in the Republic of Ireland. There have been. There were changes that we thought that were likely to happen in the north of Ireland. So was this going to be a good time to push for change in Britain? And we were thinking about what kind of things we should go for. In the past, the pro-choice movement had really fixed itself on getting rid of the 2 doctor signatures, maybe just getting 1 doctor, allowing early medical abortion to take place at home, little minor changes like that. And we kind of thought, well, damn it, if you're gonna have a campaign, you might as well campaign for what you really want. And decriminalisation is what we really want. And then lo and behold, what we actually found was that it was easier to explain to people about decriminalisation, why it was wrong for abortion to be in the criminal law, why it was wrong for a doctor to be accused of committing a criminal offence and to stand trial for a criminal offence if a woman didn't meet the criteria in the 67 Act, and indeed for a woman to be convicted of a criminal offence for causing her own miscarriage. That seemed easier to explain than all of the little bits and pieces around the 1967 Act. It really struck me how clear it was, even when I was talking to my own mum, who, at the age of 85, saying, what is it that you're doing? And I was sort of saying, well, I don't think that women or doctors should be locked up for carrying out an abortion that the woman wanted. Well, I think you're completely right about that. That would be insane, And, there's a general kind of common sense element to it. So we're doing reasonably well. About 70% of people in the latest opinion polls are saying that they think that abortion should be allowed simply because a woman doesn't want to have a child. So that's pretty good going. Interestingly, about the same proportion of MPs are saying that they think that abortion should not be a criminal offence when a woman doesn't want to have a child. And amazingly, 58% of Tory MPs are going along those lines as well. And I think that, by focusing on the Criminality Act, saying this isn't really a question of whether you approve of abortion or not, but do you think it should be a criminal offence? I think it does make it pretty clear to people. So I think that we're doing quite well on that particular front. Now, talking about our opponents, what I want to do is to talk about our opponents in really three sort of areas. There are clearly people who are absolutely fundamentally opposed to abortion on any grounds whatsoever. Organisations such as Abort 67, who are the ones who we sometimes get campaigning outside of our abortion clinics. They're the very extreme ones, the ones who'll be distributing the pictures of the aborted fetuses. They're the ones that are wearing the GoPro cameras on their heads, trying to film women who are coming into into the abortion clinics. They're the ones who write to me and compare abortion clinics with death camps during the war and say that, we are committing the equivalent of a genocide. And that's really hard. There is no talking with these people, right? It's very difficult to have a discussion with people who seriously, absolutely believe that we are the moral equivalent of the latter-day Mengeles. And what I think it's crucial for us to do in terms of dealing with these people is to attempt to marginalise them as much as possible by trying to keep them away from our clients. And I have actually had a lot of problems with the idea of the bubble zones around clinics and so on. I'm very uncomfortable with the idea because I'm a great advocate of free speech and a very strong advocate of the right to politically protest. In my red hot days of youth, I've been arrested on demonstrations myself for all kinds of reasons, and I strongly believe that it's an important part of our freedoms to be able to express our ideas. But the one thing about these people, which in some ways makes it different, and why I think that there is a reason for basically saying that they stand outside of the protections of free speech and political protest, is because they say themselves they're not carrying out a political protest, and they are not, in fact, exercising their political right to demonstrate. In fact, what they argue is that abortion doesn't need a protest, it protests itself. What they're trying to do is to stop women from accessing the services. And that, to my mind, takes it and puts it to one side. I'm still actually uncomfortable about it, if I'm perfectly honest. I much preferred it in the days when we weren't having this discussion. And we've had protesters at our clinics for as long as I've been around. It's just that it used to be a couple of nuns with a few prayer beads and prayer sheets, and the clinic managers used to take them out cups of tea because they felt sorry for them in the winter time and so on. But that's manifestly different. And my point is that I am the person that I will debate anybody at any time and anywhere on any platform. I will even debate these absolute fundamentalists, but you leave our clients alone, right? This is a matter of, if you want to have a debate, I will debate with you when life begins. But when somebody is coming to one of our clinics, that is not what they are coming to do. They're not coming to us for a discussion. They're coming for us to receive counselling or for us to receive treatment. But I do think that away from the clinic gates, it is worth engaging with these people. And the reason why I think it's worth engaging with them is because whilst there are some people who will be really bought into the idea that the life of the 3-day embryo is as significant as the woman who's carrying the 3-day embryo, and they really do put those things on a balance, really, I don't think that there are very many of them who will do that. And I had a lovely debate in a very big church in London, debating an American guy who was behind the whole Operation Rescue thing, really trying to tease out his argument and really demonstrate that I actually didn't think even he totally believed what he was saying. Because if he really thought that I was the equivalent of, a modern Hitler, if he really thought that our clinics were doing the same as the death camps, and if he really thought I should be tried in Nuremberg for that, would he honestly be calling a debate with me? I really didn't think that he would be doing that. And, I think that they kind of get it. John Harris, who's a lovely ethicist who works at Manchester University, is a professor of medical ethics there, has a lovely mind experiment in one of his books that I use quite a lot, when he basically, is talking to people who are against abortion and claiming that they regard the life of the embryo as being equivalent to the life of children and the life of adults, when he says, look, imagine you're standing in front of a burning hospital and you can do one run into the hospital and save somebody's life. You might have an internal debate about whether you run to the children's ward or the maternity ward or wherever, but you're not going to run to the fridge that's got the frozen embryos and rescue the frozen embryos, even though arguably you could be bringing out dozens rather than just the one person that you can carry. And it's a great line, great story to lob in to a fundamental, anti-choice meeting, because they genuinely find these things quite difficult to answer, because in their heart of hearts, I think not among the really die-hard ones, but among a lot of the younger people that they pull around them, who are bought into these arguments because they basically are very naive and haven't a sense of why abortion is necessary. To talk to them about these ideas does bring people over to our side, because it undermines some ideas that they thought were very logical. I was speaking at a debate with a woman, and she's also called Anne Scanlon, who runs Life, and the two of us were debating at King's College, part of the University of London, earlier in the week. And the point that I was going overboard with her on, actually, was the argument was about whether you're pro-life or you're pro-choice. And I was making the point that, I regard myself actually as being very pro-life. I do accord a large amount of moral status to the fetus. I generally have a very large presumption in favour of life. My family laugh at me, actually. It's a big family joke that I'm the one that's trying to catch the mouse that the cat's brought in to put it outside the front door. And yet I run abortion clinics. They've got this general sort of sense of, how do you tally that up? My point really is that I've got a very strong presumption in favour of life when that life is doing no damage. And when a woman is pregnant and she's carrying a fetus, yes, of course, I have a huge regard for the status of the fetus, for what it could become as a potential human being. But in terms of its equivalence or its superiority over her life and her choice and her autonomy, no, I do not really give it that particular status. It was very interesting. I was mobbed by people after the meeting who wanted to talk to me about why it is that I could sort of reconcile the idea of according a moral value to the fetus in the womb, but I didn't necessarily go down that pro-life trajectory. So I think all of these ideas are very important. It's why I wrote this book on the moral case for abortion. Now, what I will say in winding up from this is, because I'm getting my 5-minute note, is what I will say from this is that I genuinely believe that it is important for us to stand up to our opponents by trying to engage with them and their audiences, and to take up their arguments and to demonstrate to them why there is a need for abortion, and abortion is not dehumanizing and it is not a bad thing. I think it's very important to be speaking to as many audiences as possible, in fact, about the opposite, why it is a good thing for a woman to be making a decision about her future and taking responsibility for it herself. That is a good thing, and that is a good thing that our clinics offer. So this is a thing to throw out, because this meeting that I was at on Wednesday was the most bizarre meeting, the most bizarre debate I have ever spoken at in terms of its composition, even weirder than the one in the church that I was debating the American anti-life, anti-choice zealot from. And the reason why was because it was about 100 people in this meeting, about 85 of whom were men or young male students, and only about 15 of them, if my maths are right, were women. And the reason for that is because the women's groups on campus shortly beforehand had decided that Anne Scanlon, my opponent, shouldn't be allowed to speak, and that the debate shouldn't take place because she was anti-abortion, and they think that that's hateful, and so therefore they think that she should be no platformed. So basically the organisers were in fact worried that there was going to be a protest outside. There wasn't. They just boycotted the meeting, which was a real shame, because we actually had a very good, lively, very contested, but conflictual meeting. I had the same experience when I went to Cambridge University, where actually there was a demonstration of women's groups that were basically arguing the point that, in their view, abortion is beyond debate. We should no longer be discussing it at all, because it should be so obvious that it's a medical issue, and that it's misogynist to even be asking the question whether or not it should be allowed. Now, I do not think this is a useful approach to be having. And what I would really urge is, as humanists, as secularists, you are in a position where you can be talking with the feminist groups who are taking, it's not all of them, but particular groups that are taking this view at the moment and trying to ban these debates from our university campuses, because I really fear that it is not doing us any favours. It's not doing us any favours because it's actually denying us the opportunity to have the argument out and win people over to our side. We don't need to be worried about it. We should have confidence in our arguments. And the other thing is, it is allowing them to play the victim card of, oh, we're so banned at the moment, no one gets a chance to listen to us. So the best way that we can stand up to our opponents, I believe, is to engage them and defeat their arguments. Thank you.